Josh has an assignment to write a paper. His professor required that he use at least 5 books or journals from the library, including at least 1 scholarly journal and 1 book. Josh has chosen a current events topic, something that happened recently and involves current technology. He's going to write about 2009's Iranian election protests and the role of citizen journalists using social networking sites such as Twitter and Facebook to communicate the events with the world, while traditional journalists were constrained by the Iranian government. Josh starts with a web search. But there's so much information, over 8 million results, and his professor wants him to use the library. So he heads over to the campus library and wants to start looking. But what does he need to write this paper? There are web pages, newspapers, magazines and journals, books, government documents, and even more sources in the library. Josh's friend told him it's easy to search for books, so he tries that. But there aren't any books on Twitter and the Iran elections. That was a requirement for the paper, and Josh gets frustrated. He's ready to give up or choose another topic. He sees a reference librarian at the desk and decides to ask there. After hearing his topic, the librarian explains that he might not find books on this exact subject because it's so current. She mentions the information cycle, which gets Josh thinking about the events of 2009 and the kind of information that he learned days, weeks, and months after the elections. Josh heard from a friend, then saw a post on Twitter about Iranians protesting the results of the election. Often after something big happens, informal communication, like phone calls, text messages, and social networking sites get the word out initially. As the protesters organized and gathered using social network sites, there were reports on television, radio, and online news sources. Josh remembers seeing the headlines on CNN.com and the local and national news. The following day, more in-depth reports were published in the print editions of daily newspapers. Typically, these reports begin with the most current information, then offer background on the event or story. A week or more after the protests began, news magazines had issues on stands covering the aftermath of the elections with lots of photos. A month or more later, articles may have appeared in academic journals discussing specific aspects of the elections and the unusual effect that Twitter had on the news coverage. Finally, a year or more after the contested election, books and government documents may be available. Librarians call this the information cycle, and it occurs again and again each time a newsworthy event happens. When you're looking for information for an assignment, you must think about when an event occurred and what type of information you need to determine which types of sources will be helpful.